This film had been on my watch for a long time and always eluded me. Being directed by Shane Meadows, the same fella that wrote and directed This Is England. If you're British and haven't seen This Is England, check yourself. It's up there with the likes of Football Factory and the Cornetto trilogy on that unwritten list of movies every British citizen has to have seen at least once. Dead Man's Shoes is of the same vein, low budget, gritty feel, handheld camera work. This is one of his strengths, the looks of his films. I swear I've seen every single location in this movie in real life. Everything just seems so familiar. Then again, I do live in like semi-rural northern England, so I'm kind of partial to this sort of stuff. I feel like that's kind of a testament to the strength of the cinematography in of itself. It's like if someone from New York praised a movie for capturing like the true side of New York or whatever. You get what I'm trying to fucking say. That familiar feeling goes deeper because every single member of the goon squad in this movie, I swear I've seen them walking down the road in my town, conversed with some, even worked with one or two of them, you know? It's like, that's something I've always appreciated with films of this nature. The grittier, more low budget stuff is they choose actors that look like real people. A lot of Hollywood shit can look overproduced and far too glam, which is fine for like, well, most genres of film, but for something like this, a haunting, brooding revenge story, you want grit, you want familiarity. You spent a lot of time out and about around these sorts of places, you know, walking home at night. You know to look over your shoulder, you know which nooks to keep an eye on as you walk past. And he's not exactly Michael Myers, but the protagonist, Richard, isn't too far off. He stalks, he kills, even toys with his victims. Let's talk about Richard. Excellently played by Paddy Considine. Colour me impressed. I did not expect him to pull a role off like this well. I'd only ever seen him in Hot Fuzz and The World's End. Here is the exact opposite of how he is in those roles. A supremely confident, downright villainous, methodical predator out for blood. The premise is Richard and his disabled brother Anthony are seemingly living rough. Richard skulks around, tracking these group of men that did things to his brother. Quite a lot of the film is from the perspective of the bad guys though. These fellas have all this like pure naturalistic dialogue, these back and forths which seem borderline improvised half the time with how fluid the conversation flows. To the point where some of it's pretty fucking funny, to be honest. A few blips of comedy are squeezed between all the tension. I wouldn't go as far as to say that the bad guys end up being likeable as a result of this, but there's certainly a more comforting screen presence than Richard. Richard is undoubtedly the good guy, kinda, but he's like the Grim Reaper. He never relents in his grimacing, ever. I'm ill, can you tell? You get drips and drabs of all the bad shit they did to Anthony, and up until like the 30-minute mark or something, you're like, yeah, that's bad, but it doesn't warrant, you know, murder. And then as the film goes on and it reveals more and more, Richard also ramps up the intensity of his torment and violence. So to coincide with our growing knowledge of the past events, our rage and lust for justice matches the pacing of the movie, which, generally speaking, is great. Film is bang on 90 minutes, never drags, good stuff. I hate bloated films. This ain't that. Moving on. I must say, I wish we got a little bit more bloody bang for our visual buck. I don't know. Just with these murder scenes. The first one's plenty bloody, but it's just the aftermath we see, really. Every time we actually see one of them die, there's no blood. Well, there's a few exceptions, but it's very minimal. We never really see any direct impact. Now, this is a low-budget film. Still, blood isn't really what I'm looking for here. I'd just like more impact, more like oomph. You know what I mean? Yeah, whatever. It doesn't really bring the movie down that much. It's just my thing. It's my gripe, I guess. Toby Kebbell's performance as Anthony is great too. Personally, I think it's in good taste. You know, it's not like he's playing on any sort of caricature or anything. There's something to be said for someone who isn't disabled, playing a disabled person, but it's acting. It's not reality. It doesn't really bother me anyway. Just pick the best man for the job and you really can't go wrong with Kebbell. He's good in just about everything I've seen him in. So, the look of this film resonates a lot with me personally. The performances are perfect for what this film is. I'd happily take a couple more splashes of blood here and there. It wouldn't make or break the film. Let's talk about some specific sequences. One being what I believe is the best part of the whole movie, and the other kind of puzzles me somewhat. Richard drugs these three, torments them, maims them, and eventually kills them while they're tripping the box off on a concoction of classes. Now, he gets thwacked, he gets stabbed. This guy here, who's built up to be the big bad throughout the entire fucking film, gets the most impersonal quick death out of everyone, short of the cunt who died of friendly fire. I thought the whole film was going to be building up to this guy finally getting his comeuppance. And like, yeah, he did. But he got off pretty easy compared to the other people. I mean, fuck's sake, one person was hacked to death, another was chopped to fucking shoved in a suitcase. I mean, fucking hell, man. Why does this movie's primary antagonist get it so light? If you know, you know. Being fucked with, physically and verbally assaulted while you're tripping, that will send you lower than you know possible. But these guys fucking deserved it. That's exactly what they did to Anthony. It's an awful thing to watch, really, and the fading in and out of all the sounds in the scene really sell that feeling of, like, not mentally being here, not being in your right mind, and it's so fucking unsettling. It's so well done. It's incredibly effective if you've been in these circles and you know the negatives of substance abuse. I feel very strongly about this stuff, and it's portrayed incredibly in this film. But it's revealed there's one more by the name of Mark. Obviously, Richard goes after Mark. Prior to the big confrontation, Mark confesses to his wife the truth about Anthony. That, spoiler alert, but I imagine you've already seen the film, he was dead the whole time. Now, it caught me off guard because the film's so grounded in reality, you never stop to consider that Anthony might be well, he's not really a ghost. He's more just a figment of Richard's imagination, perhaps a manifestation of his guilt. Great reveal, and the flashback that accompanies it almost moved me to tears. Another testament to the emotional power of Kebble's performance. Now, for whatever reason it may be, I assume it's because it's clear that Mark has made the biggest attempt to go straight and lead a different life. His two boys seem to have the head screwed on right. His missus seems alright too. It doesn't state why Richard doesn't kill Mark, but that's how I interpreted it. He figured the guilt alone was enough punishment, and he only asked one thing of him in return: to free himself from the guilt.
Was he calling for me? Was he screaming my name? He still is.
Richard doesn't really give Mark a choice but to take action and kill him, and the final shot of the film shows Mark with literal as well as figurative blood on his hands. Sort of a poetic ending, especially the visual of the bloodied hands. However, Mark should have been introduced much earlier. It felt a little out of left field that late into the film, but yeah, that ending was far more impactful than just, the regular revenge story that it seemed to be beforehand. Also, another part of this scene that irks me is Richard's harsh words about Anthony. His mind is obviously scattered to fuck, and he's literally seconds from death and he knows it. Upon some thought, this is probably his way of expressing his guilt about the potential that he did feel embarrassed, or he did feel some sort of disdain towards his brother. He says it outright that Anthony was an embarrassment, but to me it's obvious that he loved, or at the very least cared about his brother. This is a subject not often tackled in media. This, in my opinion, is a very ham-fisted way of going about it. The subject being the negative emotional side of having a family member that is special needs. I have a brother that's autistic, but he's not full-blown. So I can't really attest to this personally, but I've seen many people express their guilt of feeling like glass children, or even just jealous that the parents had to give their special needs sibling more attention. And if it's not that, it can just be the juvenile embarrassment of having disabled siblings or family members. Kids can be cruel. They make fun of anything. And the disabled brother is certainly low-hanging fruit. To say he was an embarrassment is a bit of a verbal misstep, but in a world as cruel as this, someone such as Anthony can attract negative attention from the wrong types of people, shown very clearly by Dead Man's Shoes. Now, it's a brilliant film with a bit of a hazy ending / meaning. You've got to either really personally connect with this film or sort of dig for it. But no, I'm definitely a fan. I'm very glad that I finally got around to watching it. Thank you for watching. Stay tuned.